Hello everyone and welcome to the second board in chapter 11 of Grandmaster Ronghhua's Sandwich House Defense Treatise. Now a short recap. In the first board, this was the position that was discussed. In the first board, black chose to play r9 equals to 8, and if red played correctly, red would have a slight advantage going to the mid game. So without further ado, let us start from the beginning again. Central cannon, bell corner cannon, Pawn Chariot versus Sandwich House Defense. Now, chapter 10 and 11 involved red playing the 7th pawn, and black countered likewise. And this was the position of discussion for chapter 11. Now, in the second board of chapter 11, black could choose to consolidate his central file with e3 plus 5. Doing so would have several advantages. One would be to allow for development of the right chariot after playing a6 plus 5, and by playing e3 plus 5 and a4 plus 5, black would consolidate his central file and thus discourage red from attacking from the central file. There are two main variations. The first would be similar to the previous board, p5 plus 1. Variation 2 would be h8 plus 7. Now this is a very interesting variation because red would deliberately challenge black to see whether if he would dare to skewer, and we shall go over this variation later on. So as usual, let's start with the first variation, p5 plus 1. Now this board is a little bit different from the first board in the sense that black had already fortified his central file. So as mentioned earlier, black would continue to fortify his central file and allow for development of the right chariot. At this point in time, it was advised that red should play r2 equals to 3 to add pressure to the black horse. p5 plus 1 would not be a good idea because black would simply capture the pawn, and black would choose to trade horses aggressively instead of protecting the black horse passively. And at this point in time, red would also have started to develop his left flank. It would not be a good idea for red to capture a pawn thinking that he would be able to apply a pin at this point in time, because black would simply attack the red horse, and with this attack the black chariot would now be prepared to also use the red horse as a cannon mount to capture the advisor. Now when r4 equals to 6 is played, and as mentioned earlier, black also threatened to capture the advisor. The only move that red could play would be to advance the horse, but at this point in time, this move was not given in the book. Black could defend in this manner, so red would be forced to trade horses, but by doing so, as can be seen at this point in time, black would have mobilized almost all of its major pieces, and the black central pawn was prepared to cross the river. Red, on the other hand, would not have developed his left flank at all. So at this point in time, black would have a considerable advantage, and that is why r3 equals to 1 is not advised. Now, if h8 plus 7 was played, the left black chariot would now be developed, and red would have lost any all the moves that red had played earlier would have been played in vain. So a quick recap, it would not be a good idea to push the central pawn forward at this point in time. Instead, red should continue as he had planned earlier to add pressure on the black horse. So this would force the black chariot to protect the horse in this manner. But this situation will be a little bit different from the previous board because the advisor had been raised, so it would not be possible for black to play c2 minus 1 followed by c2 equals to 7 to attack the red chariot. So this is a little bit different. And at this point in time, red will continue to attack with 5-7 cannons. And because retreating the cannon was not an option, black would choose to attack the chariot in this manner, preparing to play p3 plus 1 to clear the way for the cannon to attack the red chariot. Red would have none of that. And red will manage to have formed a blockade, and now the black cannon will be threatening to play c2 equals to 7 to threaten the red chariot again. And this is why red was forced to play c5 plus 1. And after trading cannons, red would be better because all the left flank would not have been developed and black's left flank was rather congested. So a quick recap of variation 1. After e3 plus 5, red would choose to attack from the central file with variation 1 and developing the advisor while red would attack the black horse. And red will be better. Now in variation 2, as mentioned earlier, red would pose a challenge to black to see if he would perform the skewer or not. Now it is advised that black should deliver the skewer. R9 equals to 8 would not be a good idea because red will gladly trade away chariots. And after trading chariots, as can be seen on the board now, red would have gained some initiative because he would have made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves compared to black's 1, 2, 3, 4 moves. So red would have an easier time ahead. The development of the black chariot would be a cause of concern, and as mentioned earlier, black's left horse is one major factor or major issue for black, the development of this left horse. Because the red horse would now be at the riverbank, the development of this black horse would be limited. So red would have have increased his advantage in the game. A4 plus 5 would not be ideal either because red would simply charge the horse to the riverbank again. Now if the moves in the book ended here, if black tried to develop his chariot with r1 equals to 4, red could simply play c8 plus 2 and slowly change his formation with c5 equals to 6 to attack the black chariot. So red will still have the initiative firmly in hand. Hence, after playing h8 plus 7, it would be a must for the black cannon to threaten to deliver a skewer and threaten to capture material. Now, because black had already pushed a elephant to the central file, red will gladly trade material. A check. And at this point in time, it would be a good idea for black to play p3 plus 1. So that if red accepted the trade, the horse will now be moved to the tiger-headed horse position, which would be very powerful and threatening. So that is why at this point in time, it would have been better for red to push p3 plus 1, p5 plus 1 to advance the central pawn. This would be the most aggressive move that red can come up with at this point in time. So if as mentioned earlier, if p7 plus 1 were played, the tiger-headed horse. Sorry. If p5 plus 1 were played, red would capture the pawn and cross the river. Red would counter aggressively. This would be an important intermediate move for black to make to threaten and push and dislodge the red chariot from the pawn rank. It would not be a good idea to move the horse to tiger-headed horse position at this point because the red central pawn had now crossed the river and could threaten the horse immediately. And after trading horses, although the black pawn was very well advanced, we can see that red would have developed both chariots and would have commanded important lines on the board now, whereas black's chariots have not moved at all. So this pawn would be easily captured, and all the moves that have been used in moving this black pawn would be erased to nothing. So the development of the red's major pieces will be much faster than black, and red would now command a considerable advantage. Hence, it is not a good idea for black to capture the pawn or trade pawns immediately. Instead, an intermediate move of c2 plus 1 should have been played, forcing the red chariot to retreat, and it will be a much better time now for sorry, for red to play h5 plus 3. Now red will usually continue with r9 equals to 8 as recommended, and because the pawn was the cannon will now threaten to push the to protect the pawn from capture by the red chariot. Check, counter check, and again red will still have the advantage. So although the black chariot will now try, the black horse will now attempt for a elbow horse attack, but the black cannon would be lost, and this loss of material would be quite significant so early in the mid-game phase. So that is why it will be to red's advantage at this point in time. So a short recap. In the second board, after red had played r2 plus 6, the second board discussed e3 plus 5, whereby black would try to consolidate his defenses, which from the looks of things would not be ideal. Now in the first variation, red will try to attack from the central file, and red will still be able to maintain his advantage and initiative in the game. In variation 2, red would try to gain some initiative by challenging black to deliver a skewer, which black must do. And after trading material, the issue of the pawn on the third file would be more or less resolved by red attacking aggressively with by advancing his central pawn. And at this point in time, red would gain material, although the tiger-headed horse was quite a threat, because now red would be threatening to capture either the black horse or the central cannon. So red would have the advantage, and if things went as smoothly, red would most probably win the game. So I hope you've enjoyed this week's short video, and there will be 3 more boards left to be discussed for the sandwich horse defense. I hope you've enjoyed today's board, and if you like my work, please subscribe. Thank you.